Hello, this is Frida Liu and you're watching The Shift, where we cover everything around sustainability. And today the topic is, why is DEI, or diversity, equity and inclusion, a sustainability issue? Now, in support of the 30% Club's global ambition of Path to Parity announced this year, marked by the launch of a new brand identity, the Malaysian chapter is aiming for all PLCs to have at least 50% women representation by 2030. Now, as of 1st July, there are over 600 out of 900 plus PLCs, including 42 out of the top 100 PLCs on Bursa Malaysia that still have less than the threshold of 30%, but it's come a long way. And I'm here with Dato' Amy Morris, the chair of the 30% Club Malaysia, to discuss more. So welcome.
Hey, Frida.
Such a pleasure to have you here. Now, let's start with why, in case people don't understand and still don't know by now, why gender parity is important for businesses. And let's start with the bottom line, because money always speaks louder, right? How does gender parity show up in financial returns?
Okay, so first and foremost, I just want to say that when we mention gender parity, let's call a spade a spade. The facts on the table is that we're really very far away from gender parity.
Right.
So the 30% Club Malaysian chapter is very much what we call a capital market business campaign.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that is where we really want capital to walk the talk, right? So the 30% Club, the ambition is really to get to what we call a 30% tipping point,
right? Because
we believe that when you have at least 30% of representation of differences, diversity in your boardrooms, where there are many powerful decisions that are made, then you will be able to effect a lot more impact and inclusion. So in terms of what you asked about, how does it show up financially, right?
Right.
So the 30% Club being very capital market focused, naturally, we always, our first position is that diversity, celebrating differences, right, is really a very solid business case. So, all you need to do is look online, and there are plenty local, regional, global reports that provide very substantive data points to show that, better DEI, and especially better gender DEI, gender diversity in boardrooms, will lead to a higher correlation of profitability measured in terms of your return on equity.
Right.
Basically, companies that embrace differences, and not see differences as something that is hostile, are able to leverage on what we call the battle for talent, getting the best talent out there from the total addressable pool, and that will have a higher correlation to build more successful companies.
Right. And yes, you're right. We can go into all the research, whether it's local, whether it's global. It has shown that when we do have gender parity and diversity, right, companies do tend to do better, right? In an article in DNA, it was said that any failure to achieve the target is reflective of the corporate sector and not of the organization. This is a quote you made. What do you mean by that?
Just, to me, just to put in context, right? It is up to every organization, every company, every corporate to determine just how aggressive, how accelerated they want change and transformation in today's age, right? In today's global context, where having a clear and definitive competitive advantage, is very important, right? So my emphasis would be every organization, and particularly within the capital market, regulators like Bursa Malaysia and the Securities Commission are making sure that companies understand, right? What do you need to do as an organization to make sure you have a very robust corporate governance framework?
Right.
So, but ultimately, the company itself or the organization itself must be, walking the talk, delivering on all the ESG imperatives as required by Bursa Malaysia, and embracing the spirit of the Code of Corporate Governance, for example, as per the Securities Commission. So whilst, yes, there are many industries that remain male-dominated, ultimately, and where perhaps, pipelines for building gender DEI in boardrooms may still need a lot more effort to be invested in, ultimately, organizations really need to be the ones that are at the forefront, pushing the agenda.
Right, and setting themselves deadlines, right, and building that pipeline. Now, the Institute of Corporate Directors Malaysia in the Malaysia Board and Diversity Study Index mentioned groupthink hampering better decision making. So, have you seen this personally?
Okay, so for me, groupthink, how I would define groupthink is a group of like-minded people coming out with less rigorous solutions.
Right.
Naturally, right? Because if your boardroom consists of people that you have affinities with, you come from the same school, same university, same kampong, whatever, you are going to have fairly significant like-mindedness.
Right.
And again, I come back to the fact that in today's global context, right, we have pressing issues around changes in climate patterns, we have inequitabilities of access to education, to water, to natural resources all over the world. And so it is extremely important that there is a diverse group of people thinking about what are the different types of risks that a company needs to really understand, to manage, to mitigate, to ensure that the business model, a successful business model can emerge, the current business model can be transformed to withstand all the different types of risks and challenges, whether it's physical risk, transition risk. And so, but if you have like-minded people, everybody is going to have the tendency to say yes to the same things and no to the same things. Whereas the role of the board in today's world, where the governance of the ESG imperatives is really, really key, because one is when we talk about risk, but the other really fantastic aspect of ESG is the opportunities. Right? So globally, companies coalescing around the 17 Sustainable Development Goals is not just about the world having a common agenda aligned along common interests, but there's so much effort to make sure that there is transparency around the different investments that can be available, the different types of capital pools that can be available for the different prongs of the 17 SDGs. So in that sense, if you miss out on diversity of board composition, of board mindset, people coming from different age groups, ethnicities, universities, socioeconomic groupings, you're going to miss out from that 360 view.
Yes.
Right?
Blind spots.
That's right. One is blind spots, and the other is that you are going to miss out on what your different customer segments actually consider to be important or things that matter.
Right. It's little, I mean, we tend, of course, the thing is also we tend to gravitate to people that are like us and we like us, and then after that, also sometimes speaking up, because we all don't want to rock the boat because we all think the same way, right?
Yes.
Because now since 2017, 106 women have been mentored, right? And 41% of them have secured board positions, right? And I know 30% Club is not involved in placement, but why do you think the 49% had not been placed? It's also a bit of self also.
Yeah. No, so it is a very interesting data point. So basically, for every, there's a 50% probability so far success rate, right? So again, we are in Malaysia, the capital market, for example, we are at very early stages of building a robust corporate governance framework. Bursa and the ESG imperatives, the Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance is still at very infant stages. So, and to me, that the typical notion of who sits in the boardroom tend to still be, male.
Yes.
They
older,
more mature people, former C-suites, people who generally tend to be more from the accounting or finance background, because up to very recently, the world revolves very much around just financial capital. Right. So really, it's only with the SDGs talking about gender equality and education for all, that people are really investing in understanding that what does it take for this kind of quality decision making across organizations to really happen. So they still typically look at certain segments, and hence why, when boardrooms now need to embrace the ESG imperatives that are set up by Bursa, for example, it is at the starting point of understanding what do we as an organization, or what do we as a company really need to have, in terms of composition, right? What are the different skill sets? What are the different expertise? Not just accounting, finance, you need legal, sustainability, technology, right?
Brand management,
right? Marketing. So it is really in terms of putting very much at front and center what I call human capital, right? Financial capital has always been, at the forefront. Now understanding that there is a huge battle for talent out there, right? With all kinds of economic opportunities arising from the internet. So it is the job of an organization, driven also with the oversight from the board, to make sure that they get the best talent, right? Making sure that we cast the net as wide as possible, and ensuring that we understand that the board composition consists of the right skill sets, mindsets, the best talent, and people who have the right qualities, to really drive quality decision making.
Right. Do women hold themselves back, from your opinion?
Very much so. One exercise that is very interesting is that if you were to ask a woman candidate, how ready do you think how ready are you to take on a board seat? They tend to say
50%.
Or more than that. They tend to say 70%, I'm about 60-70% ready. And hence why, I don't think maybe I want to go for a board seat as yet. Whereas when you ask a man, how ready are you? They'll say, well, I think I'm a good 60%, 65%. And they'll say, I'm so ready. So that's where people, women do tend to have doubts. And that is just, to me, natural. Women have been in this, in the more workforce, in critical positions, in a fairly,
behind the scenes kind of thing.
And it's only been over the last 40, 50 years, really, that there has been a lot of emphasis on women in leadership, women in decision-making powers, and things like that. So we have a long ways to go, but I think we've made a lot of progress, and I'm really excited about the opportunities that are out there.
Right. And what kind of expertise, right? I know you mentioned a little bit, but maybe what do you think would be required, would be good, looking at Malaysia's capital markets? I don't know if it's the same around the world as well, to ensure that the board is vibrant and relevant. Okay,
so I do have this kind of, I've kind of structured also a way of thinking about it, and I'm actually doing a program myself, on directorships. So really, to me, in terms of what it takes, there are 4 things. Firstly is IQ. That is assumed. Otherwise, you wouldn't, you wouldn't be a person that an organization or company is talking to. So IQ is assumed. Then secondly, there's EQ. So EQ is actually a must-have. Being empathetic, listening to management's pitches, and really understanding the challenges and issues that they have, the excitement and passion that they bring to the table. Then there is the inspiration quotient, which I love, because I do think that one of the key attributes that every human being must have is that they must take on the responsibility to inspire the person next to them in whatever setting, right? So the inspiration quotient is about making sure that we inspire everyone that we come into contact with, whether it's in the boardroom, whether we're in engaging with management or across the organization. Last is what we call the courage quotient, right? So to be a board member, you need to be really bold and brave, because the fiduciary duty of a board member is to make the decisions, right, that you think are right in the best interest of the organization, and I quote, right, irregardless of the consequences. So basically, you stand your ground. If you think something is not right, something about climate change that is not being addressed, risks to the business model is not being taken seriously or invested adequately in, you have to stand your ground, and you may not be popular for it. You are likely to be unpopular for it, but that's the kind of courage that we need if we are really to deliver on the sustainability development goals by 2030.
Right. Okay. Okay. So I guess, like, do you also take into consideration age and cultures to ensure diversity is in place, or Is that still a challenge? I mean, here we are trying to get the gender parity, and there are all these things happening. Or do we have enough of a pool here in Malaysia? Because we're quite a diverse nation.
Well, to me, getting to any kind of goals, getting to gender parity that the 30% Club is trying to achieve, say, by 2030, is always about building the pipeline today, right? So, for example, for all of Bursa's public listed companies to achieve 30% women on board on an aggregated basis, we actually need that specific number, assuming that board seats don't change, 351 women. So the question is, do I think that there are 351 women out there who are capable? For sure, right? So now what we want to be able to do, now that we are at the 30% tipping point, Bursa has achieved 31% of women on board. Now we really need to be inclusive, getting women who are younger, women who are differently abled, different ethnicity, the orang asal, women from Sabah and Sarawak or from the East Coast. So those are huge considerations, because ultimately what we want to drive at is inclusion, right? Everybody, no one's left behind. Everybody has a right to have a view and should be represented.
Right. Okay. So you sort of alluded to this earlier on as well, but from your perspective, what usually holds women back from wanting to take up board positions? And you mentioned that because we can bring a horse to water. And do you find that after the mentoring program that really also helps with their confidence, I guess?
Yeah, any kind of mentoring or sponsorship meaning having people who are willing to vouch for you, will always, help boost, what I call the 3 C's: your competency, your confidence, and your courage to actually take the seat. So, there are, and it's not only the 30% Club that needs to be part of this. I think it needs to be a whole of industry, whole of organization approach that has to be taken to make sure that we seek out women, who are very, very talented, but may not be hanging out with, the specific networks of people who make the decisions in the boardrooms, that they don't, do the usual sports of play golf, or because they have other better things, other different things to do. So it is about investing in the structured and systematic search for these women. They are out there, I know, right? Say, for example, we have another partnership with Women in Tech. So a big shout out also to Yuki, who's founded the Malaysian chapter, and we're trying to make sure that, hey, if you're looking for women in tech, go to Penang, right? Because this is really the technology and electronics hub for Malaysia. So it's making sure that also we really reach out to more women through partnerships and collaborations, so that everybody is very much, converging on the common goal of getting, more gender representation, which can lead to better diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Right, and a bit more capacity building as well. The 30% Club now has goals of at least 50% women. Big, hairy, audacious goal, right? By 2030. Now, how are we getting there, Dato'?
Yeah, as I've mentioned, right, I love 𝗵𝘃𝗃𝗄, big, hairy, audacious goals. Because, I think I alluded to it. The 30% Club on its own cannot do it. We are a business campaign completely resourced by volunteers who are very passionate and who believe that better DEI will lead to more successful organizations and companies that will help elevate Malaysia's capital market, industries, Malaysia's national agenda to elevate productivity and competitiveness. So it has to be a whole of nation approach. Lots and lots of partnerships and collaborations. People really taking time, effort, and investing their passions, connecting all the different dots. Women taking to the seat. Women talking to people like yourselves, so that we can amplify the message, just in case there are women out there who are very busy in their work schedule, their home schedules, and who may not have thought, hey, I can actually contribute to this, these opportunities around transformation that the whole world is trying to invest in.
Right, okay. Will more women being mentored by 30% be the answer? So I guess, you were saying it takes everybody, right? And the whole nation, the whole different bodies, and finding that. Who else would you like to be part of that conversation?
Well, I'm very, very encouraged and very positive, because when I have conversations with counterparts or through various networks for different reasons, I find that ASEAN as a region is a lot more progressive in terms of our conversations around ESG. In fact, I have a lot of collaborations around with people from the EU and as well as the US. Of course, EU, perhaps they are facing a bit of an ESG fatigue because they are so far ahead of the game. Whereas US, it really hasn't even started, right? But ASEAN as a region, we are very, very progressive because our regulators, right, have learned from their own OECD counterparts that there are real risks out there that companies, the private sector and the public sector really need to understand and really need to know how to mitigate and what to invest in if we are really, to ensure the longevity of humanity, for example. So yes, very, very encouraging. Lots of, I think, opportunities for people to take hold of, and to really leverage because ultimately, every company needs to be profitable, right? Without profitability, that was your original question. Without profitability, it is very challenging to talk about growth and most importantly, to have impact, right? To create impact in a positive way without profitability.
Right, and we've come a long way, at the 30% Club from 14% in 2017 to 30%, and it's great stuff. And of course, there's more work ahead with the big, hairy, audacious goal, and it will take a village, all of us working together. Thank you so much for being with us today. I've been speaking to Dato' Amy Morris from the 30% Club, and of course, this is The Shift.